with that, can we actually just
Yes.
start with that? I hate
Yes.
breathing exercises.
Yeah. I think they're awful.
Why do people love them so much?
Good question.
None of the views, opinions, or information shared on this podcast are shared in the context of a professional contracted relationship and should not be considered therapy or any type of professional advice. If you have urgent mental health concerns or any kind of emergency, please call or text 988, the Crisis and Suicide Hotline, where you can speak 24/7 to a counselor, or dial 911 for other emergency services. Please remember that you are not alone and you are worth fighting for. So please keep fighting. Love, your ex-therapist.
Anyway, so yeah, welcome to our podcast, Love Your Ex-Therapist. I am Lindsay Ringenberg,
And I am Marjorie Ware.
and we are here. Yes, yay! Yay to our new
Yeah.
listeners and our old listeners. If you were
Yeah.
former listeners of our former podcast, Therapeutic Bullshit,
A good six
welcome
years
back.
ago.
What? No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't six because
Yeah. Nope.
we stopped.
Oh, well, sure. If we're going to stop on our end date, it was 2020, so 5. But we started in 2019.
Okay, but it is what? Shut up. I seriously was just sitting here thinking it was 2023.
Just deduce 2 years. Humby. That's fine. I'd be okay living in 2023, oddly enough. I think it'd be preferable at this point, which is saying a lot.
You know what I would give to. It's fine. It's
Fine.
fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, we are in fact in the year 2025,
Mhm.
March 2025.
That's right.
Yes, in 2020,
Hmm.
March 2020, we did not continue with therapeutic bullshit because bad things
Things
happened.
happened. Yeah.
Things happened, yes. And we thought that we were thriving, and it is, yes. Well,
That's what we wanted to believe.
we were for the first couple
Sure, yes.
months when we were
Yeah.
like, oh God, this is nice. Shut
Yeah.
down
Nothing's
and
needed of us. I can stay home.
deeply, deeply in denial.
Yes. And it was nice. Dare I say, therapeutic.
Dare I say, deeply in denial. And
Yeah.
then so many people died. And it was terrible. And it was so terrible.
It was bad.
It is still, actually, it's so terrible.
Nothing has changed. It just
We
gets
had no
worse.
idea, and we had no idea how bad it was actually going to get.
Yes.
Welcome to the Extremely Hopeful podcast.
New titles.
Little did you know just how therapeutic it was going to get.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and gosh, do you have a lot to look forward to the next 4 years?
We'll see if my profession still exists. We shall see.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Marjorie actually is still a therapist.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we should make that clear. Marjorie is still a therapist. I am not.
Yes. I
So,
could become not a net therapist.
yes,
Maybe not on my own will,
yes. Mhm.
but currently,
Right.
yes, still a therapist.
Mhm. And I, like many people, got divorced and remarried.
Very
So,
nice.
yeah.
I am about to get married,
Yes, I'm so excited.
and that's exciting.
Very exciting.
Didn't think I was going to do it, but
Mhm.
here we are. We changed our
In the
minds.
same relationship, nonetheless.
Yeah,
So you
in the same
actually,
relationship.
it's like a
Yeah,
bingo card thing. Like, whew,
very.
yeah, very few people. If you remained in the same relationship at the beginning of COVID to, till now, yeah,
And we're
congratulations.
striving.
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Do we want to start with a little bit of more introductions for us, or do we want to just go straight into the topic and we can tell
Yeah, we'll get
folks
into
about?
who we are and all of the details at the end because if you are anything like us, you are probably going to skip the first episode if we talk about how we got here and why and all the things. So let's just roll into what is even therapy because
Yes.
we could talk about what therapy used to be,
Hmm.
but it's changed. And so we're gonna delve into just some thoughts, some little tidbits, some
Yeah.
thoughts and perspectives from Marjorie, who is still a therapist, and to me, who used to be a therapist, is no longer, and just some perspectives from both sides of the fence, and kind of delve into, just our own experiences and, you know, some perspectives as to
Yeah.
where we are at and kind of where we might go. Yeah.
That sounds lovely.
Let's start with what is the definition of therapy? If we were to kind of just flat, baseline it, what is the definition?
Well, based on Webster's dictionary,
Oh, good old Webster.
it let me know that therapy literally means to heal something, and typically it's some sort of disorder. And then if we really go back further into like Latin and Greek, Latin for therapy meant heal, and then in Greek meant to, oh shoot, what was it? I knew this. I had it memorized.
I believe in you.
Okay. So in Greek, it meant to minister, to treat. And then in Latin, it meant healing. So that is the original definition and how it,
But those are really big, wide open definitions.
yeah, which kind of makes sense, right? Because we have so many forms of healing,
Hmm.
not just mentally, but also then physically and so on and so forth.
Hmm. And I mean, we even break it out into now like counseling, right? Because we even have counselors and therapists, depending on what you get licensed in.
Hmm.
So, we didn't even really look up the definition of what counseling is.
But I
Um,
can now.
thanks, Google.
Google says that the definition of counseling is the provision of assistance and guidance in resolving personal, social, or psychological problems and difficulties, especially by a professional. And that is used as a noun, but as a verb, to counsel is to give advice. Good to
That's
know.
really interesting because
Very.
those are actually pretty different when you look at the definitions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we think about like just those definitions, I mean, I guess I mean, I kind of, we have one, so therapy is very broad and generalized.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you could argue are therapy. And then counseling is, I think, much more narrowly defined in some ways and even includes, like, usually by a professional, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then giving
Yes.
advice is interesting.
Yes. Very.
Because usually in therapy and in counseling, we talk about like how we don't give advice. That's kind of like antithetical to kind of what we do or should strive to do.
Yeah.
Um,
And then interestingly enough, like in counsel, like as a school counselor, there is advice. There
mm-hmm,
is actual, like, let me plan out
mm-hmm,
what you need to do.
mm-hmm,
And even in marriage counsel,
mm-hmm.
not by mental health professionals, but I'm thinking of um, churches.
Yes, right, exactly. So you,
Mm.
again, you have like underneath that umbrella sort of a different subsets that
Yes.
might give advice.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Fascinating.
mhm, mhm. And I mean, I don't know, how would you define it for yourself? And like, is it different from those definitions, like just as far as in your practice?
I guess I don't intend to do those things. And that might seem so interesting considering I literally went to school for it. But I personally do not have special, I'm not tied to the idea that I'm there to help or heal or advise anyone's things. So rather it feels more of a being in the moment and providing space for you to naturally navigate what you're needing to navigate.
Hmm.
And I'm just sort of there, maybe adding a flashlight to a path that you haven't checked out, or, you know, finding out why you even want to look into whatever you're wanting to look into. But I sort of don't see myself as like, I'm here to heal
Hmm.
you.
Right.
Uh,
And I
but
think
yeah,
that's generally, ideally, we should strive for that stance.
ideally, doesn't always work, but
Yeah. Like there's some savior complexes for
sure.
sure.
For sure.
Yeah. And I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, it's interesting because I think when I was in my private practice, that was definitely very much my stance as well.
Yeah.
It's like the idea that people aren't really broken. You know,
Yes.
I don't believe in broken people. And you know, you and I being best friends and like going through grad school together, I think we really shared that orientation, and that was like a big part of kind of
Hmm.
our stance and like why what I mean, why we gravitated to each other, and a big
Yeah.
part of why we were, you know, really close colleagues, but also like why we were very close friends and remain so even to this day, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's interesting now, even not being a therapist, but how that has shown up in all of my work and just how I treat people,
Mhm.
and in being an educator when I have taught students. Um, it's been surprising how other people have kind of balked at the idea that we should treat students like people.
Oh, shocker.
Yeah, or the idea that extending benefit of the doubt,
Hmm.
or just assuming good intent, or starting from the place of a, just the idea of that positive regard. I mean, just really people being struck by that.
Yeah, it's apparently a hard one.
Yeah, and that's rough. That's rough to encounter that and just realize that that's not the norm, you know. But even, and again, that wasn't always the norm as a therapist either. And that was part of being disillusioned in the
Mm,
field,
yeah.
and that was, we talked about that and a lot when we were therapists. And that was, why we had a really selective group of therapists that we, were friends with and things like that. It was really a struggle.
Mhm.
Um, and so, in a way, the disillusionment continued,
It,
even outside of, obviously, the therapy world. But, it just the idea of getting to educate others in other fields, and just having their minds be blown in a way.
mhm.
It's just very interesting where it's like, well, what if we thought about them in this way? Or
Just putting it
like,
out there.
or, just being like, oh, that's interesting. I've always thought about it this way, or, that's not, that's not how I think about it,
Yeah.
and just sharing openly, um, has also has been good in getting to share that with other people, and getting to shift cultures and things like
Hmm.
that. Um, so that's been nice too, is to
Right.
see people respond to that as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
mhm.
Okay. Lovely. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah, but I don't know, I guess the counseling part,
Yeah.
which also makes me think about like life coaching because,
Yes.
I do some life coaching
Hmm.
and like how life coaching kind of gets a bad rap, because there are so many people who flock to life coaching because anyone and your mom can be like a life coach. It doesn't
At
have a
least
lot
at the
of,
moment.
at least at the moment,
Yes.
because it's not regulated and et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Um, and, you know, I started doing life coaching just, well, because actually there are so many restrictions on being a therapist, and transferring credits and stuff like that to other states is very complicated. It
Hmm.
is not standardized except
Mm-mm.
through K-CREP, but we didn't go to a K-CREP accredited school.
No.
And finding out that that actually has maybe fucked me in a lot of ways, um, is also one of the things that has completely disillusioned me with the
Hmm.
field, because it's like there's no accountability, there's no recourse, there's no like, schools can kind of just do whatever the fuck they want, and they can lie to students, which I was certainly lied to, or misrepresent
Hmm.
information, and they can just take zero responsibility for that.
Correct.
Um, and so being a life coach is like one option, but also because, you know, I take umbrage with the certification mill, if you will, of like therapy, and just, which we'll totally get into in another episode.
Yes.
But yeah, all the things. So there's a lot of reasons, but yeah, like the hours and the supervision and the
Hmm.
other personal reasons that we'll get into,
Yeah.
you know, um, and like having a master's degree in counseling psychology immediately qualifies me above like a lot of life coaches. However, life coaching kind of gets a bad rap because it is sort of more of a advice driven
Sure. More
field.
counseling.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But there's like certain subject matters where I think life coaching is like really successful, like career counseling, for example, or
Right.
like life or career coaching, um, and like certain things like that, or like health coaching, where you have someone who's like willing to like go work out with you, for example.
Yes.
Things like that,
Totally.
where a therapist isn't gonna do that, obviously. But I also like, for me, what I like about the idea of that is there were certain things with therapy that you couldn't do. Like, for example, go somewhere with a client
Mhm.
to actually get at the root of certain things that it would
Yes.
not be appropriate to do as a therapist, or
Yeah.
appropriate to do as a therapist, but that I think actually would be inherently therapeutic.
Oh,
Like, to
have you watched
go,
Shrink?
I haven't. What
Literally
is
the
it?
vibe.
Oh, what is it? Tell me.
It's on Apple TV. It's
See,
with
everything good is on Apple TV, and I refuse to subscribe to
I know, I'm
something
so
else.
sorry. I'm just gonna have to give you my subscription at least.
Yes,
But it's a
do it, because
therapist
fuck
who's
Apple. No,
so
sorry.
tired of the sort of gatekeeping and rules of therapy, especially while he's grieving with the
Mhm.
loss of his wife. And he's like, fuck the rules. And he goes to and sort of do like exposure therapy and does unconventional ways of doing
Right.
therapy that actually has been so wonderful to
Hmm.
these clients. I mean, he kind of fucks up later on, but then
Yeah.
find out the point of life is it's messy.
Uh-huh.
There's no right
Right.
way to do things. You just try it,
Right.
see if you like it. But
Well,
anyway,
and that's the thing is like the rules are there for a reason, obviously, because there are a lot of terrible people who are out to
right.
harm others and like a lot of well-meaning people who do things that harm others. And the problem is that we've gotten to a point where everybody's so afraid of getting sued that
Hmm.
we've started to just create a dehumanizing system where everything's about covering your ass.
Yeah.
And we've actually kind of moved away from holistic peopling, like it's no, like, it's just gotten to the point where I don't know, human interactions have just become so stilted and artificial, um, that I don't know, they just don't even resemble, I don't know. I don't know. It's gotten,
Medical. It's gone,
yeah, it's gotten
you
really
know,
medical. And I just think that there are scenarios, well, I say that, but the problem is that, well, the problem is, I don't know. I don't know what the problem is, but it feels like hypocritical that we have a system that, hugging a client is
hmm
like, and then we have therapists who can fuck their clients and not lose their license, which, by the
correct.
way, happens,
Happens.
right? Remember when
Yeah.
we looked up that information, we were like, excuse me?
Yeah.
And we
They're
found,
quite protected, oddly enough.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I was like, what do you mean therapists don't lose their license when they fuck their clients? Like that,
Hmm. Just a little minor suspension. You just can't work for a little bit. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And I've heard like several stories now of people who have gone on to marry their former clients.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and it's just, so there's things like that, the hypocrisies within the system. And then these other sorts of like, well, you better not accept a gift from your client
Yeah. I could
because it
send them mostly.
creates, and I'm just like, I'm going to need you to write back to me when you make it so that therapists automatically lose their license when they fuck their clients. Can we talk about that? Like,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that client who bought me a gift that was $15, like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, what is even therapy?
I don't know, because it's starting to feel like a whole big racket.
The disenchantment is really like,
Mm. Well, and then
oh,
insurance companies have gotten in the mix and they're trying to, what is it now? Certain insurance companies are trying to make
mhm.
therapy 35 minutes or something. What is it?
I've been trying to do that also for a long time, but so that they can pay us less, obviously.
Well, yeah, obviously.
That's all. Yeah. Or they need to pay less because it's not a non-profitable service. They don't get anything in return.
35 minutes.
Yeah. Because, obviously you can do a lot of work in 35 minutes.
35.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you do in 35 minutes?
Good question. 35 minutes works only if we're in maintenance.
Right.
Like all the work has been done for them
Hmm.
on their own accord, and they feel like, actually, there's nothing more I need to say.
Hmm.
Got what I needed. Usually 35 minutes does the work, does the job for them.
Yeah, and
But
you're
if you
meeting
were
like what, once every,
a month,
yeah,
if that, yeah.
yeah.
But if it's a weekly situation and we're currently deep in the trauma of it all, it's
Mm-hmm.
currently happening. Yeah, no. I struggle to like keep it at the hour.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
The hour is a struggle.
Hmm. Yeah. And that used to not be like there wasn't a time limit for therapy for so
Mm-hmm.
long. And then insurance came in like you got an hour.
Right. Right.
Sure, you can add more codes to add another 30 minutes, but please prove that it was medically necessary,
Right. And the documentation and blah, blah,
whatever
blah.
that means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So, with all that being said, now that we've successfully not defined what therapy is,
correct. Because there's no such thing as it turns out.
mhm. So are you currently seeing a therapist yourself?
No, I am not.
Oh, but why? Why not?
Well, one major reason is finances.
Hmm.
Being a sole business owner and getting premium insurance is expensive, and but also that means my deductible expenses because I don't prescribe to industry driven businesses where they get a cut or a deal with insurances to have better deals. So I have a high deductible. And then that also usually means that my insurance is not often that other therapists like to get paneled on with,
Hmm.
most likely because it's not super popular or they don't get a great enough reimbursement to get paneled with them. So that's the major one. But also, it's really difficult for me to want to find a therapist that I feel like is going to be my match.
Hmm.
So that's really difficult, especially when I know that like art therapy is going to be my best jam or some sort of expressives therapy where talking is not the major focal point.
Right.
Yeah. And what about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was seeing a therapist, that did take my insurance. But I'm not seeing her currently because honestly, I'm still paying off a whole shit ton of medical bills that I am on a payment plan for, that I just keep adding medical bills to
Mm.
because even though I'm paying $600 a month as my premium, I still have deductibles and copays, and yeah, I end up just adding it to a big pile of, you know, yeah, I ended up having to do a payment plan,
Yeah.
because I have so many doctor's visits and specialist visits, due to, autoimmune conditions that I have. And I have had two major illnesses in the past year. One that I'm just still figuring out because I spent the last like 2, 3 months really sick
Yeah.
from this respiratory thing, which a lot of people have struggled with. This has been a bad year, for respiratory stuff. And yeah, missing a lot of work because of those illnesses. So it is a bummer. And yeah, it was talk therapy, which, like I think is helpful for me because I I do need to practice like talking about myself because I
Mm.
tend to bottle things up. I forget to talk about myself sometimes, and share about myself sometimes. Um, so it's like a good practice for me to talk about myself and
Yeah.
having someone to do that with regularly, um, because it's uncomfortable for me. But, you know, it costs money, because there's
It
a
sure does.
copay. There's a
Yeah.
copay, and the copay
Yeah.
is not cheap. Do you remember the days when copays were cheap?
Hmm.
Like I don't know
$10.
about you. Yeah, and now copays are like 20, 30, 40, $50. Like,
If you have, now that I work with insurances, I'm kind
yeah,
of gathering how it works. So, depending on where you work, if you work somewhere where you get a W-2, they often have better deals. And then you actually get to decide, obviously, your plan.
right,
And so the better plan, the more expensive gets taken out of your paycheck.
right, right,
So a lot of my clients range still between $10 and 25.
right.
But then there's some
Uh-huh.
where their copay is 70, $75, which is insane.
Yeah, I had a plan where it was like my regular doctor copay was like $20, but
Yeah.
then the specialist copay was $80. But the thing was is that physical therapy was $80. And I did not know that. And like with PT, you're supposed to like go like frequently.
Yes, in a
So
short amount of
yeah, so I had
span.
no
Yeah.
idea they billed me for
Yeah.
like 6 PT appointments that I had already gone to. And I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And then I looked it up and it was like, yeah, PT is considered a specialist. And I was like, oh, well, so I had to stop going to PT.
Yeah.
I
So
was like,
like
I'm sorry, I can't afford to go to PT twice a
yeah.
week, even though that's what you want me to do. I can't.
And you're like, and I'm sure it would benefit me. However,
Yeah, yeah. I needed to go to PT, but I was like,
not with my bank account.
no,
Mm-mm,
no,
not with that.
sorry.
But
I'm
yeah, I think
sorry. Yeah, right.
finances are top tier reason.
Yeah. But also, I do find that my creative practices, I get more mileage out of my creative practices. Like if I don't do my creative practices, I notice more impact
Hmm.
not doing them than if I don't do therapy. You know what I mean? And so I'm better
Right.
off making sure I'm doing my creative practices at least than making sure I'm going to therapy because, and I say that because I've gone to therapy for like decades and I go to therapy on and off. So like I'll go, if I'm having a hard time, I'll go for a few months as sort of like a tune up because
Yes.
I've gone to therapy a lot. And so it's like, a tune up, a reminder of the skills, hearing the things that I need to hear, you know what I mean? And so like there's value in that. Um, but once it's sort of like I've gotten tuned up, I don't need to kind of keep going.
Correct.
Um, yeah, because I don't believe in going to therapy forever and ever.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
And
and so
I
yeah,
even can feel that as the therapist. I was like, you really
right.
don't need to actually be here anymore.
Yes.
And sometimes that's actually oddly a difficult conversation to bring up with clients.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, or you're like, have you considered that you don't need to be here anymore? And they're
Yeah.
like, excuse me, what?
What?
What do you mean I'm better? It's like, well, okay, okay, everybody calm down. Everybody calm down.
It's just we have
Mhm,
nothing else to talk about.
mhm.
You're just telling me now about your life, which I love hearing.
Yes,
Don't
they
get
can
me
get real,
wrong.
people can get real upset about that though.
But yeah, they can.
Yep.
It's hard. It's hard kind of like ending that sort of routine or
Yeah.
whatever.
So what about you? Like what other things do you find therapeutic other than therapy?
Sorry.
Since you're not seeing a therapist.
Since I'm not seeing a therapist. Um, well, one I use whenever I would see a therapist, I sort of use it as like I'm currently in crisis, much like everybody else. There has
Hmm.
to be some sort of driving force to make me deal with it, or I need support extra that is beyond what my partner, family can do, and friends. So when that's not a thing, and I'm dealing with daily stuff, um, it's both. one, I love distractions and I use sort of reading rom-coms and romance and
Hmm.
fantasy to to give me the good feelings. Sometimes music, turning up music that really makes me feel good.
Hmm.
Love what they're saying. So I think words, but I'm a words of affirmation kind of person, so it kind of makes
Hmm.
sense that like seeing it, hearing it, um, that's that could be wonderful and provide hope for me on a daily basis, especially when it comes to love.
Hmm.
I know that's super corny, but I'm really,
Not
really
at
into that.
all. Not at
Yeah.
all.
But I love love, even though I don't show that very well. So I think that
That's
kind
not
of,
true.
but like in like a, I love those like corny things, but I'm not good at actioning it.
That's probably why you like it.
Yeah. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like an inspiration
Yeah.
of the thing that I actually really
It's a
want.
mental Pinterest board.
It is a mental Pinterest board. That's what the books do for me.
You're like, ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Okay.
That's a
Okay. Yeah.
that's a good thing to say to somebody
Yeah.
to let them know that
Put
I
that
love
in
them.
the
Yes.
Rolodex.
Yes. It's literally
The entire
inspiration.
audience is like, what's a Rolodex? I'm old. Shh. Google
Look
it.
it up. Yeah. There's image.
Ah, Google
uh,
crashes. It's fine.
but I think that's generally like to get the good feels. And then like in sort of like more of the therapy healing realm, I know well, like what you're talking about, there's things that I need tuning up on, and I know the things that I need tuning up with, and like all those sort of vulnerabilities. So I'll try to make sure that I practice those things, uh, even though they will always kind of suck. They never actually
Hmm.
get better or easier. So it's just kind of like, oh, I just need to make sure I know how to ride that bike.
Yeah.
You know, it's there,
Right. Exactly.
but you're like, I just got to make sure.
Yes.
I should use it.
Yes.
Yes. What about you?
Well, I mean, like I was saying, my creative practices,
Yes.
I write a lot of fiction. I think creating fictional worlds is a really effective way of processing, things that have happened to me, things that people, creating
Yeah.
scenarios. Like I write a lot of speculative fiction, and I think writing like dystopia like really helps me process, you know, um, the big bad scary things in my life in a way that's really like compartmentalized and safe.
Yeah.
It also helps me explore the themes of things that have happened in my life. I also create artwork, and actually right now I'm working on a board game.
Nice.
Yeah, and so just I mean, I also garden. I also, you know, um, gosh, what else do I do? I mean, there's lots of different things like
Yeah.
photography. I make jewelry. I, I do like cooperative projects with people. Right now, my partner and I are working on, a business plan, and there's just like lots of different things. I've always got my hand in like multiple different pots,
Yeah.
and it's just something that I'm always looking to challenge my own mind and grow and try new things. And that's kind of just how I've always been. But it's also, I'm really into like creation. Like I really like
Yes.
to create things.
Yes.
And that's just something I really like to do. And so I find that really therapeutic. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I like that though,
yeah.
because it's sort of like I think that's sometimes what I want to always let people know that everyone has this very specific need for
Hmm.
therapy or like what is inherently therapeutic, like you being creative, and mine is like consuming to feel inspired to do,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
you
Definitely.
know,
Hmm.
and using those natural things.
Hmm.
I don't
Yes.
have to try some, like, if you ask me to be creative, I will die inside. It's not gonna work. I will only feel stressed. That's why I only do it in therapy when I'm already stressed.
But I'll ask you to come do something with me in
Yeah,
your game,
right.
like this
Because I'm
podcast.
inspired by you.
Yes, but like this podcast, like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
did my last, you did
that's
therapeutic
true.
bullshit
That's
too.
true.
So that's the
But
thing.
yes,
Marjorie is always game, so invite her to
correct.
everything because she will always do the things.
Yes. I like an invitation because I feel like you did the hard thing of inviting. And I
I
feel
love that you think
deeply
it's
grateful.
hard.
Yeah. Saying yes is easy.
Well, that's funny because the invite is easy for me. I'm just like, Marjorie, come with me. Do the things.
Sometimes you just got to know what your things are.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
that's great.
Yes. So
All
that's the
right.
thing. People know what the things are. And if you don't know what the things are, go to therapy and find a therapist who'll help you figure that out.
Yeah. It shouldn't take too long. Just kidding.
Go to Marjorie. She will help you.
We'll find it out in 2 seconds. You'll never need me again.
Okay. Well, speaking of which, I think now would be a good time to transition into the how did we get here? Like, why are we doing
Yeah.
this podcast?
Good
Why did I
question.
invite you to
Yes.
do a ex-therapist podcast?
Please let them know.
Yes. Okay. So I've been sitting on this idea for a couple of years now, which, I was honestly kind of scared to do this podcast, for a lot of reasons. I left the field. Um, let's see. I left the field in 2022, after being a therapist through the first couple of years of COVID.
Mhm.
And I found myself just a wreck, honestly. I was just a mess, which had a lot to do with a lot of personal reasons. A lot of people were struggling during COVID, and I think the isolation of having a private practice, we graduated into COVID. Um, I think 6 months after graduating was when COVID hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, you had already been a therapist, I think, for a year by
Yeah.
that point. Yeah. And so it was it was a lot. And there was a significant deficit of mentorship. Um, our supervisors did the best they could, but everybody was struggling. Nobody knew how to do a pandemic, like nobody knew.
Hmm.
Um, and at the time, I was a foster parent. I was in a marriage that was already struggling. There were a lot of things happening. And so, after about 2 years, 2.5 years, I made the very difficult decision to leave the field of mental health. I was ending my marriage. And I had been accepted to an MFA program in creative writing. And it was actually one of my clients who inspired me to do that.
Hmm.
And I actually told them this as well when I was leaving,
Yeah.
because they had said something very profound. Um, and, the idea is that I realized just because you are very good at something, and just because I had been told throughout my entire life that I should be a therapist, because I had spent my entire life comforting people and making them
Mm.
feel better. And I had become very good at that. Um, and what I realized throughout COVID was life was very short, and we had better spend our lives doing what was important to us. And not just therapy was important to me, and I loved my clients, and the work was never bad. because of my
Yeah.
clients. Like that was the most important thing. And if any of my clients are listening to this or any of my former clients are listening to this, just know like, I mean, y'all were the best part of the work, like absolutely hands down.
Yeah.
And it was never the clients that, were an issue. Like people who complain about their clients, you shouldn't be a therapist, like straight up. Like, no, really. I mean,
Qualified
like, yeah,
this. Yeah.
like if the clients are a drag, then either like you're burnt out, you need a vacation, or you're really not meant for the work. You know,
Yeah.
like one of those things are true. Um, and but everything else about the work, um, was just, it was, I was collapsing on the inside and I was no longer showing up in the way that I needed to in the work. And so I was also wanting desperately to go back to what I really felt like I was meant to do, which was the creative work,
Mhm.
um, and the writing and creation, which is really, you know, it's also inherently good and therapeutic for me, and which is
Yeah.
what I needed at that point because I was so empty, so burnt out and just carved out. And I was dealing with severe chronic pain at that point because I had an illness that was ramping up, and it was making my day to day like really, really hard to get through. And so, yeah,
Hmm.
at that point, as I left therapy and it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was really, really challenging. And I got a lot of not, not incredibly supportive commentary from people in the field about leaving. Um, and that was really hard. And it took
Yeah.
me a really long time to process what leaving meant. I felt like a failure. I felt a lot of guilt and shame. I felt like I had thrown away my education. I felt like I had wasted my time, my money, a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I felt like people hated me. Um, and it took me a long time to work through that, because there was a lot of things I wanted to say about what I had learned and also about the very serious problems that had occurred, as to why I left. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to do this podcast, but I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And now I am ready to talk about it in a way that I think is constructive and true and authentic and balanced, to who I
Yes.
am and who I was, and, as to what happened, and also what I think is helpful to people now as we're looking ahead to 4 years of whatever is to come. And I think that it is kind of a scary place. I know that I'm scared, but I also know that like now I have real community and I also have real hope, as far as, knowing, feeling more resourced as far as like pragmatic things that we really can do to protect ourselves, to lean on each other, and to be prepared and resourced, as we face, you know, the changes and destructions of support systems at the larger level. We
Mhm.
need to get more oriented and more resourced at the community level. And so my hope is that Marjorie, you and I are going to talk more about that, especially when we talk about mental health and well-being, because even if you don't have access to a therapist or access to the mental health system, there
Mhm.
are very real things that you can do,
Yeah.
that are inherently therapeutic. So we're going to be writing love letters and comment cards to all of you out there. And so
So
that's
nice.
my intention with this podcast.
Okay.
And there's no one I would rather do it with than you, Marjorie.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Yes. So what are you hoping, or how did you decide that you were going to come along for this crazy ride, Marjorie?
Um, good question. Partially, like a big part is like supporting you because I love you and all of the things. So that's like a main thing. In case you haven't just listened, I love love, and this is how I show up. Is saying yes to the people that are important to me. But then when you brought this topic up, and finding myself deeply resonating on the other side of inaccessibility when it comes to therapy and what is even therapeutic as a therapist, I was like, actually, that's a really good conversation to have. But also, I love being able to talk to you about different ways of seeing things and thinking about things. And it's not just this sort of black and white, this is what you need to do. So I really like being able to witness you and help voice all those sorts of different opinions, what all can work, and it's not just my job that heals. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then also selfishly, I do like actually want to have an opinion, which I know I pretend I struggle with, but actually it's something that I do want to always practice.
Mhm.
If I'm being
Yeah.
honest. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. And as we talk, we do love the Enneagram around here.
Oh yeah.
And so, I think that's one of the practices too for the nine
Yeah.
is sharing and voicing that opinion. So I
Yeah.
think that
It's my
that's
this is also inherently therapeutic for me to know that I matter and that what I have to say matters.
hmm
You know,
hmm
that kind of a vibe.
yes. And I think we should also just share for people who don't know us, because
Yeah.
we're talking as if all these listeners know who we are.
Mm.
So I went to school at St. Martin's University in Washington State, and I do have a master's in counseling psychology. I also work as an educator, and I am the author of two books. And I am, let's see, what else am I? Panic. What am I? Who am I? Um,
Podcaster,
yeah,
creative.
podcaster. You can also find more of my creative work at piercebooks.com. That's what I publish under. And you can also see more of my creative community under fiercecc.com.
Mhm.
Um,
Jewelry.
yes, you can see that jewelry under there as well, under my profile. And yes, Marjorie, what about you? What are your stats?
What are my stats? I also went to the same school as Lindsay, same master's. Um, I have my own private practice. It's called MKW Counseling, PLLC, here in Tacoma, Washington. Um, my credentials is the licensed mental health counselor and also a marriage and family therapist. Um, I have a cat. She's beautiful. She's lovely. And most of the time, I love reading, hanging out with the people I love. It's very, very simple. I like consuming all the creative things. That is that is me. And then I like to embody it. That is my hobby.
She does lots of fun things. I don't know why she's downplaying all the fun things she does. She likes to travel and do lots of fun
That's
activities.
true.
Yeah.
I will I will jump off a plane like I
Yes.
have. So, but I am a yes person.
hmm
So that kind of I'm not opposed to doing things. I just have to be invited to them, apparently, is a golden rule for me.
You also made me feel like a terrible cat mom and dog mom because I didn't even mention my children. So now I'm like,
You do have a lot of children, to be fair.
I have 4
Yeah.
glorious kittens and one beautiful fathead baby dog that I love so
Yes.
very much.
So
And
cute.
yes, so yeah, I didn't know we were introducing our children. Okay.
I was like, who else is really important to me?
Yes. Anyway,
But they got brought up, and that's all that matters.
now they did.
Yeah.
Don't tell them. Think I don't love them.
They will never know. But yeah.
So yeah, that is our, oh my God, we just did episode 1.
Yay.
So we thank you very much for joining us. Again, this is just the beginning. What other kinds of episodes will our listeners slash watchers have to look forward to?
Well, we have quite a bit, to be fair. Certain topics come start with we'll have
Just pulling
guests.
up our
Yeah.
list.
We're gonna have some guests that we'll get to invite and
Hopefully they will.
say yes. Yes. Yeah. We'll make them. Uh, bribe them if we must. But certain topics will include like losing access to mental health care, what's inherently therapeutic, what are the cracks in the system, what does radical community care look like, what is even self therapy, since that's getting real
Mhm.
popular. um, how do we create therapy or what is inherently therapeutic? What's graduating therapy?
We
What?
also want to talk about AI
Oh,
in
yes.
therapy, like
Perfect.
technologies in
Yeah.
therapy, because that's a really interesting topic that's coming up a lot. I know some of you out there may have already tried it.
Yeah.
Some people are seeing a lot of the advertisements for little AI bots,
Yes.
and talking about making friends with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I had a very interesting experience with ChatGPT, which I'd love to share with everybody. And let's see. Oh, yeah. We're going to have a series of snippets, which are going
Mm.
to be love letters and comment cards. And if you have a love letter or comment card that you would like to share with the show, please feel free to email it to us.
Yeah.
And it is it Lindsay? Lindsay at yourextherapist.com. And yeah. Or wait, no, it's yourextherapist at gmail.com. That's the one.
Perfect. We'll have it, I'm sure, on the
Yes.
comments below.
It's going to be in the show notes.
Yeah.
Please check it out. And please make sure to follow us on Blue Sky and TikTok and YouTube.
Yeah.
Subscribe to the channel. We will also have, obviously, the audio versions are going to be on Spotify and Apple. If you are listening to us currently on Spotify and Apple, know that there is a video version on YouTube. If you are into that and you want to see our faces, you can watch it on YouTube. Or if you just prefer audio versions, that's perfectly fine too.
Absolutely.
Whatever you prefer. Some people have preferences. And
Yes.
I'm not going to say that word because that's not a real word. What is it called when it's a video? And is it just podcasting?
I think it is just podcasting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Lovely.
So, thank you very much for joining us. And we will see you in episode 2.
Bye,
And
everyone.
they're going to premiere on Sundays. So, you can look forward to us rolling out each week, hopefully.
Hopefully. Caveat.
All right. Thank you.